My name is Clara. I'm 32 years old, and my life was destroyed and then rebuilt because of a single PDF file. It was an invoice, sent by my own mother, demanding I pay over $20,000 for the baby my sister was having with my ex-boyfriend. Before I tell you about the invoice I sent them back, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Thank you for being here, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. Let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. It means the world to know we're all in this together. To understand how things got so bad, you have to understand my family. Growing up in our quiet little house outside of Cleveland, Ohio, there were always two sets of rules, one for my younger sister, Chloe, and one for me. Chloe was the fragile, delicate one. She'd had a minor heart surgery as a baby, and even though she was perfectly healthy by the time she was 5, my parents never stopped treating her like she was made of glass. I was the strong one, the responsible one. The one who could handle it. That's what they told me, anyway. What it really meant was that Chloe got everything she wanted, and I got the leftovers. I'll never forget the night Chloe, at 17, took our dad's car without permission. She and her friends went joyriding and she ended up wrapping the front end around a telephone pole. I was woken up by a frantic phone call, my dad's voice tight with panic. But when Chloe came home, crying and hysterical, there was no punishment. There were hugs, reassurances, and the next week, my parents paid for an expensive defensive driving course for her. A few months later, they bought her a used sedan of her own. When I turned 17, with a perfect driving record and a part-time job I'd held for 2 years, I asked my dad if he'd help me get a car. He just shrugged, not even looking up from his newspaper. Chloe needs the encouragement to stay on the right path, honey, he said. You're already doing fine on your own. Doing fine on my own meant that when it was time for my senior prom, I'd saved up for months to buy the perfect dress. It was a simple, elegant navy blue gown, and I felt beautiful in it. The night before the dance, I came home from my shift at the diner to find it crumpled in a heap on Chloe's floor. A giant, dark red stain was blooming across the front. She'd borrowed it to go to a party and someone had spilled wine all over it. My mother's solution was to tell me to be the bigger person. She made a mistake, Clara. Don't ruin her night by being angry. They loaned me the money for a last-minute replacement from a department store, a dress I didn't even like. And they made sure I paid back every single dollar from my salary over the next 3 months. The loan they gave Chloe for her car? That was eventually forgiven. I pushed through it all. I put myself through college, working 2 jobs and living on ramen noodles, while Chloe dropped out after 1 semester because it wasn't her vibe. I landed a good job at a marketing firm in Columbus, got a nice apartment, and finally felt like I was building a life that was truly my own. I met Ethan, a kind and handsome architect, and for the first time, I felt genuinely happy. We were stable. We were planning for the future, talking about a promotion I was working toward. And then, one Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Chloe. Clara, she sobbed, her voice thick with fake tears I'd learned to recognize from a mile away. They fired me. My boss is just a monster. He said I was late too many times, but it wasn't even my fault, the boss. I tuned out the rest of the excuse. I knew the real story involved her hitting the snooze button too many times. I sighed, rubbing my temples. What do you need, Chloe? My landlord's kicking me out, she wailed. I have nowhere to go. Can I please just stay with you for a little bit? Just until I find another job. I swear, it'll only be a couple of weeks. I looked around the peaceful, organized apartment I shared with Ethan. My sanctuary. The thought of Chloe's chaotic energy invading it made my stomach clench. Let me talk to Ethan, I said, my voice flat. Ethan, bless his heart, had met Chloe several times and saw right through her. Are you sure about this, Clara? He asked gently that evening. You know how she is. A couple of weeks could turn into a couple of months. It's just for a little while, I insisted, the old, familiar guilt gnawing at me. She was still my sister, after all. She just needs a little help to get back on her feet. What's the worst that could happen? I hung up the phone after telling Chloe she could come. The silence in our apartment suddenly felt heavy. Ethan was watching me, his expression a mixture of concern and pity. He just nodded slowly, but I could see it in his eyes. He knew, just like a deep, sinking part of me knew, that I had just invited a hurricane into our home. The hurricane arrived 2 days later with 3 oversized suitcases and a cloud of entitlement. Chloe sprawled her belongings across our living room like she was claiming territory. Half-empty mugs of coffee, fashion magazines, and discarded clothes littered every surface. The expensive shampoo I bought for myself started disappearing at an alarming rate. Ethan's prediction came true with painful accuracy. A couple of weeks became a month, then 2. Her job search consisted of her scrolling through social media on the couch, occasionally sighing and saying, "Ugh, the job market is just so brutal right now." Ethan tried to be patient, for my sake. But I saw the tension in his jaw when he came home from a long day at the firm to find Chloe watching reality TV in her pajamas at 4 in the afternoon. I saw the way he'd retreat into his office, the door closing with a soft but firm click. The peace in our home had been replaced by a low-grade, constant irritation. I kept making excuses for her. "She's just going through a tough time," I'd tell Ethan. "She'll get it together." But even I was starting to lose faith in my own words. The day my life fell apart started like any other. I had a huge client meeting scheduled for 2 p.m., a presentation I'd been working on for weeks. But around noon, the familiar, dreaded aura of a migraine started to creep in. Blurred vision, a wave of nausea. I tried to push through it, but by 1 o'clock, the pain was blinding. I called my boss, my voice trembling, and told her I had to go home. "Go, rest up," she said, her voice kind. "We'll reschedule." The drive home was a blur of traffic lights and throbbing pain. All I could think about was a dark, quiet room. I unlocked the door to my apartment, the silence I was craving just moments away. But as the door swung open, I heard a noise. A strange, rhythmic sound coming from the back of the apartment. From our bedroom. My first thought was that Chloe was sick, or maybe she'd fallen. My migraine was forgotten as adrenaline surged through me. I rushed down the hallway, my heart pounding against my ribs. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open and froze. Time didn't just stop. It shattered. There, in my bed, the bed I shared with Ethan, were my sister and my boyfriend. Naked. Tangled together in the sheets I had just washed that weekend. The world narrowed to that single, impossible image. The rhythmic sound I'd heard was the headboard of my own bed, hitting against the wall. Ethan saw me first. His eyes widened in pure, animal panic. He shoved Chloe away from him, scrambling for the sheet. "Clara! This isn't... I mean..." Chloe turned, and to my utter disbelief, she didn't even look ashamed. She just sat up, casually pulling the sheet over her chest as if I'd just walked in on her watching a movie. A little smirk played on her lips. A voice I didn't recognize as my own cut through the ringing in my ears. It was cold and steady. "What the hell is this?" Ethan leaped out of bed, wrapping the sheet around his waist like a pathetic toga. "Baby, I am so sorry. It just happened." "It just happened?" I repeated, the words tasting like poison. "You just happened to fall into bed with my sister? In our bed?" Chloe rolled her eyes. That dismissive, arrogant gesture she'd been using on me my whole life. "Oh, come on, Clara. Don't be so dramatic." The casual cruelty in her voice made something inside me snap. 2 years with Ethan. 2 months of taking care of Chloe, feeding her, housing her, listening to her endless complaints. And this was my reward. This was what I deserved. "Get out," I said, the words low and dangerous. "Both of you. Now." Ethan started babbling, making pathetic excuses. Chloe came onto him. It was meaningless. He loved me. It was all just noise. But Chloe, she just laughed. A short, ugly sound. Don't bother, Ethan. She was never good enough for you anyway. She looked directly at me, her eyes cold and triumphant. I love him, Clara. And I'm taking him. He's been unhappy with you for months. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I moved. I stormed to the closet, yanked open the doors, and started pulling out their clothes. I threw Ethan's shirts, Chloe's dresses, everything, into a pile in the hallway. I grabbed her 3 suitcases from the living room and Ethan's gym bag and threw them on top of the heap. You have 5 minutes, I said, my voice shaking with a rage so pure it felt like fire. 5 minutes to get your things and get out of my apartment before I call the police and have you removed for trespassing. They scrambled, dressing hurriedly, stuffing their belongings into bags. I stood with my arms crossed, staring at a crack in the wall, focusing on it, because if I looked at either of them I was afraid of what I might do. When they were done, I followed them to the door. Clara, please, Ethan tried one last time, his hand on the doorknob. We need to talk about this. There's nothing to talk about, I said, shoving the door open. I pushed them into the hallway and threw their remaining bags out after them. You're dead to me. Both of you. I slammed the door, shot the deadbolt, and slid down to the floor, my back against the wood. And only then, in the sudden, deafening silence of my empty apartment, did I finally let the tears come. I spent the rest of the night in a daze, deleting the flood of texts from Ethan without reading them. The apartment felt contaminated. I stripped the bed, stuffing the sheets and comforter into a trash bag. I couldn't bear to look at them. Later, as I sat numbly on the couch, my eyes fell on my jewelry box on the dresser. Something felt wrong. I walked over and opened it. My heart stopped for the second time that day. It was gone. The delicate, antique diamond necklace my grandmother had left me. It was the only piece of her I had left, the only real inheritance I'd ever received. It was always in its velvet box, right in the center. Now, the box was empty. And I knew, with a certainty that made me sick to my stomach, who had taken it. The buzzing of my phone finally broke through the fog of my grief around 9 o'clock that night. It was my mother. A part of me, a small, stupid, hopeful part, thought she was calling to check on me. Maybe Chloe had called her, confessed, and my mother was calling to offer some comfort. I was so wrong. Hello? I answered, my voice hoarse from crying. What in God's name is wrong with you? Her voice was a shrill accusation, so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. There was no greeting, no preamble. Just pure, undiluted rage. I was floored. Excuse me? How dare you throw your sister out on the street like that? She called me, Clara, hysterical. She has nowhere to go, no money, all because of you. The injustice of it felt like a physical blow. I couldn't breathe. Mom, do you have any idea what happened? Did she tell you what she did? She told me you had a little argument. A little argument? I laughed, a broken, bitter sound. She was sleeping with Ethan, Mom. I came home and found them in my bed. My bed! There was a pause on the other end of the line. I waited for the shock, the anger on my behalf, the maternal protection that I had craved my entire life. Instead, what I got was a sigh of exasperation. Well, these things happen, Clara. I was sure I'd misheard her. What? What did you just say? I said, these things happen. People make mistakes. She's your sister, for God's sake. She's in love with him. You should be happy for her. Happy for her. The words echoed in the empty space in my chest. My world, which had already been shattered, was now being ground into dust. Happy? Are you serious right now? She betrayed me in the worst way possible, with the man I was planning my life with, and you want me to be happy? You're being selfish, she snapped, her voice turning cold. Listen to me. You have a good job. You have a good salary. You can find another boyfriend, another apartment. Why don't you just let Chloe and Ethan have your place? They're just starting out. They need it more than you do. The suggestion was so monstrous, so completely divorced from reality, that I actually wondered if I was hallucinating from the pain of my migraine. Let me get this straight, I said, my voice dangerously calm. You want me to pack my bags, leave my home, and just hand it over to my sister and the man she stole from me? Are you insane? Don't you dare take that tone with me. I am your mother. You've always been jealous of your sister, always so competitive. It's time for you to grow up and do the right thing for your family for once. The right thing? I shot back, the last thread of my composure snapping. Like what Chloe did. Or what you're doing right now, defending her. This is unbelievable. You're impossible, she shrieked. I raised you better than this. No, you didn't, I said, the truth of it landing with the force of a physical blow. You raised Chloe to believe she could take whatever she wants without consequences. And you raised me to stand by and let her. Well, I'm done. I'm done with all of you. And then I remembered. The empty velvet box. And another thing, I said, my voice dropping to an icy whisper. She didn't just take my boyfriend. She took Grandma's necklace. The diamond necklace. It's gone. This, I thought, this would be the thing she couldn't defend. A piece of family history, an inheritance from her own mother. The silence on the other end was different this time. It wasn't exasperation. It was calculation. Oh, Clara, don't be so dramatic, she finally said, her voice dripping with condescension. I'm sure she just borrowed it. She probably wanted to wear something nice for Ethan. You know how you are, you hoard your nice things. You've always been selfish, holding on to that necklace. You have to learn to share with your sister. That was it. That was the moment the last bit of love I had for her died. It wasn't a fiery death. It was a quiet, cold extinguishment. She wasn't just defending her favored child, she was defending a thief. She was calling me selfish for wanting to keep the one precious thing I had from the grandmother who had actually loved me. I felt nothing. Just a vast, empty calm. Goodbye, Mom, I said. Clara, don't you hang up on me. You will listen to me. I pressed the red button on my screen, ending the call. Then, with deliberate, steady fingers, I went into my contacts. I found her name. I blocked her number. I blocked my dad's number. I blocked Chloe's number. I went on social media and blocked all of them. I severed every digital tie, every possible avenue they could use to spew their poison into my life. I had spent my entire life being the responsible one, the understanding one, the one who sacrificed. I was the family shock absorber, taking every blow so that Chloe wouldn't have to. And for what? To be told to hand over my life to the people who had just destroyed it. Not anymore. I stood in the middle of my silent, contaminated apartment and I made a promise to myself. I would not just survive this. I would build a life so full of happiness and success that their toxic world couldn't even touch the edges of it. They had cut me out. But what they didn't realize was that they hadn't cut me out. They had set me free. The first few weeks were a blur of gray. Freedom didn't feel liberating, it felt like floating in a cold, empty void. I went to work, I came home. I ate when I remembered to. Sleep was a battle I rarely won, and when I did, it was filled with nightmares of walking in on them over and over again. My apartment, my sanctuary, now felt like a crime scene. Every corner held a memory I wanted to erase. My work, which had always been my refuge, became another source of anxiety. The promotion I'd been working towards seemed like a distant dream from another life. I'd sit in meetings, staring at spreadsheets, and the numbers would just swim in front of my eyes. My focus was shattered. I missed a deadline for the first time in my career. Then I missed another. My boss, Mrs. Davis, was a woman in her late 60s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She called me into her office one afternoon. I walked in expecting to be fired, my stomach in knots. She gestured to the chair in front of her desk. "Close the door, Clara." I sat down, my hands clenched in my lap. She didn't waste time. "Your work has been subpar for the last month. You're distracted, you're making mistakes. This isn't like you. What's going on?" I opened my mouth to give a vague excuse, but looking into her stern but not unkind face, the truth just came tumbling out. Not all of it, but enough. "I'm going through a very difficult personal situation. A bad breakup. A family crisis." She listened without interruption, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she leaned forward. "Clara, I'm sorry for what you're going through. But this is a business. I can't have you dropping the ball. Your salary depends on your performance." She paused, letting the words sink in. "I have a new campaign for the Miller account. It's a huge opportunity. I was going to give it to Mark, but I'm going to give it to you. This is your one shot to get your head back in the game. Don't make me regret it." It wasn't sympathy. It was a lifeline. A challenge. And it was exactly what I needed. That night, my old college friend Liam called. We'd kept in touch over the years, a steady, easy friendship. He was a graphic designer, smart and funny, with a calming presence. He'd never liked Ethan, calling him too polished. "Hey," he said. "Haven't heard from you in a while. Everything okay?" And just like with Mrs. Davis, the dam broke. I told him everything. The whole sordid story, from Chloe moving in, to the betrayal, to the theft of the necklace, to my mother's horrific phone call. He just listened. He didn't offer platitudes or easy solutions. He just let me talk until I was exhausted. "I'm coming over," he said when I was done. "Liam, you don't have to." "I'm coming over," he repeated. "And I'm bringing pizza." He showed up an hour later. He didn't try to hug me or offer awkward condolences. He just put the pizza on the coffee table, put on a stupid action movie, and sat with me in comfortable silence while I ate. The next weekend, he showed up with boxes. "This place is haunted," he said simply. "Let's find you a new one." He helped me find a new apartment in a different neighborhood. He helped me pack, never once complaining. He was just there. A solid, unwavering presence in the wreckage of my life. With a new place to live and the Miller campaign to focus on, something inside me shifted. I poured all my pain, all my anger, all my feelings of betrayal into that project. I worked late into the night, fueled by coffee and a burning need to prove my mother wrong, to prove Chloe wrong, to prove to myself that I was more than what they had tried to reduce me to. I was not a victim. I was a survivor. The day of the presentation, I walked into the conference room feeling a nervous energy I hadn't felt in months. But it wasn't anxiety. It was power. I knew my material inside and out. I delivered the pitch with a confidence that surprised even me. Mrs. Davis called me into her office the next day. A rare smile touched her lips. They loved it. Miller signed the contract this morning. She slid a folder across the desk. "This is your official offer for the senior strategist position. The promotion is yours, Clara. You've earned it." I walked out of her office with the folder in my hand, the new, higher salary printed in black and white, and I felt like I could fly. I called Liam. "Celebrate with me?" I asked. That night, over dinner, the line between friendship and something more began to blur. The way he looked at me, the way his hand lingered on mine across the table, it was different. This wasn't a rebound. This was a slow burn, a connection that had been building for years, waiting for the right moment. Our relationship grew organically, without the drama and intensity I'd had with Ethan. It was built on a foundation of respect and genuine affection. A few months later, he took me to meet his parents. I was terrified, my own family experience having poisoned my expectations. But they were wonderful. His mother hugged me like she'd known me for years. His father clapped me on the shoulder and told me he was glad Liam had finally wised up. They treated me like family. The real kind. 6 months after that disastrous day, Liam took me to a beautiful overlook by the river at sunset. He got down on one knee, and with a voice full of emotion, he asked me to marry him. I said yes without a single hesitation. For the first time in my life, I felt completely, unconditionally loved. I was finally home. The months after our engagement were a happy whirlwind of wedding planning. Liam's mother, Janet, was a godsend, diving into the preparations with an enthusiasm that was both touching and a little overwhelming. We were looking at venues, tasting cakes, and for the first time, I was letting myself dream of a future that wasn't tainted by the past. I had a new life, a new family, a new home. I thought I had finally escaped. Then, one evening, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but something made me answer. Clara? The voice was strained, tight with a false urgency I knew all too well. It was my mother. My blood ran cold. I hadn't spoken to her in almost a year. What do you want? I said, my voice flat. You need to come home. Right now. It's an emergency. A matter of life and death. My stomach dropped. Despite everything, they were still my parents. Is Dad okay? Are you sick? Just come, please, she pleaded, her voice cracking. As soon as you can. She hung up before I could ask more. My mind raced with terrible possibilities. A car accident, a heart attack. I turned to Liam, my face pale. I have to go to my parents' house. Mom says it's an emergency. He frowned, his eyes full of concern. Want me to come with you? No, I said, shaking my head. I'll be fine. I need to do this myself. The 30-minute drive to my childhood home felt like an eternity. Each mile brought a fresh wave of anxiety. What if Dad was dying? What if I had been so wrapped up in my own happiness that I had missed the signs? The anger I held for them felt petty in the face of potential loss. I pulled into the familiar driveway and hurried to the front door. My mother opened it instantly, as if she'd been watching for me through the peephole. Her face was etched with worry, but she looked healthy. What's going on? I demanded, stepping inside. Who's hurt? She didn't answer, just led me toward the living room. My dad was sitting in his usual armchair, looking perfectly fine, reading the newspaper. And sitting on the sofa, her hands resting on a swollen, unmistakably pregnant belly, was Chloe. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying. The relief that no one was dying was immediately replaced by a cold, creeping suspicion. This wasn't a medical emergency. It was an ambush. What is this? I asked, my voice hard. I remained standing, my arms crossed over my chest. A wall between me and them. My mother gestured dramatically toward Chloe. Your sister needs you. Chloe sniffled, putting on the perfect performance of a tragic victim. Ethan left me, she whispered. I waited. That couldn't be it. That couldn't be the life and death emergency. And? I prompted. That's it, my mother said gravely. He's gone. Moved to Arizona. He's refusing to marry her or have anything to do with the baby. He wants her to get a custody lawyer if she wants a dime. I looked from Chloe's tear-streaked face to my parents' worried expressions. A year of peace shattered in an instant. I shrugged. Okay. And what does this have to do with me? My parents exchanged a look, a silent, practiced communication. Then my mother took a deep breath. Well, Clara, she said, her voice full of false sympathy. This is, in a way, your fault. The statement was so profoundly absurd I laughed out loud. It wasn't a happy sound. My fault? How, in any possible version of reality, is my sister getting pregnant by my ex-boyfriend my fault? You should have warned her, my dad chimed in, finally putting down his paper. You knew what kind of man Ethan was. You were with him for 2 years. You knew he wasn't reliable. You let your sister fall for him without saying a word. I stared at them, speechless. The sheer, twisted audacity of their logic was breathtaking. They had managed to contort a story of betrayal and theft into a narrative where I was the negligent one. Let me see if I have this right, I said slowly, enunciating each word. My sister sleeps with my boyfriend in my bed. She steals him from me. She steals a piece of family inheritance from me. They move in together, she gets pregnant, and then he leaves her. And somehow, this is my fault because I didn't warn her that the man she was sleeping with behind my back might not be a great guy? Don't twist our words, my mother snapped. So what do you want from me? I asked, cutting her off. An apology? Financial support, for starters, my mother said, getting to the heart of the matter. Chloe can't work in her condition. She has bills, doctor's visits, she needs things for the baby. You have a big promotion, a fancy new job. You can afford to help. No, I said. The word was simple, quiet, and absolute. I will not give her a single cent. Her pregnancy is not my responsibility. My mother's face flushed with anger. How can you be so heartless? This is your family. This is your niece or nephew we're talking about. And Chloe is the woman who destroyed my life, I shot back, my voice rising. The woman you defended. The woman you told me to give my apartment to. Why on earth would I help her now? Because that's what families do, she shouted. That excuse doesn't work on me anymore, I said, turning to leave. I'm sorry about your situation, Chloe. But you made your bed. Now you get to lie in it. I walked out, leaving the sound of my mother's indignant shrieking behind me. But it didn't end there. It got worse. A week later, I got a call from my aunt. Clara, your mother called me. She said you're refusing to help poor Chloe, all because you're jealous. Is that true? The calls kept coming. Cousins, old family friends. My parents were on a full-blown smear campaign, painting me as a cruel, vindictive monster who had abandoned her pregnant sister in her time of need. Then, they crossed a line I never thought they would dare to cross. I was called into a meeting with Mrs. Davis and the head of Human Resources. My heart pounded in my chest. Clara, the HR manager began, his face grim. We received a phone call this morning. From a woman identifying herself as your mother. He paused, looking at his notes. She made some very serious allegations. She claimed you have a history of mental instability and that you've been embezzling money from your family for years to fund your lavish lifestyle. The air left my lungs. This wasn't just a family squabble anymore. This was an attack on my career. My livelihood. The life I had fought so hard to build. They were trying to burn it all to the ground. I sat in that sterile HR office, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and felt a terrifying calm settle over me. This was it. This was the final escalation. They weren't just trying to guilt me or manipulate me anymore. They were trying to destroy me. That is a malicious lie, I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. I looked directly at Mrs. Davis, then at the HR manager. My mother and I are estranged. She is trying to retaliate against me for a personal family matter by attacking my professional reputation. Mrs. Davis, who had been watching me intently, spoke up. I've known Clara's work for years. She handles multi-million-dollar accounts. She is one of the most honest and dedicated employees I have. I don't believe a word of it. Relief washed over me so intensely my knees felt weak. The HR manager nodded slowly. Legally, we have to document the call. But without any proof, it's just an unsubstantiated claim. However, Clara, he said, his tone serious, you need to handle this. We can't have this kind of drama bleeding into the workplace. I walked out of that office with Mrs. Davis's support, but the message was clear. The war had come to my doorstep, and I had to end it. Ignoring them was no longer an option. They had forced my hand. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with Liam. I told him about the call to HR. He was furious, ready to call a lawyer and sue them for slander. There's a faster way, I said, opening my laptop. They want to make this public? Fine. Let's make it public. For the next hour, I wrote. I didn't write with anger or emotion. I wrote with cold, hard facts. I started from the beginning, the years of favoritism, Chloe moving in, the betrayal. I detailed the theft of my grandmother's necklace. I described the phone call from my mother, her demand that I give up my apartment. I wrote about their current demand for financial support. And then, I detailed the call to my workplace, the attempt to get me fired. I didn't use inflammatory language. I just laid out the timeline of events, a simple, brutal recitation of the truth. Before I hit post, I hesitated. This would be permanent. This would be the final nail in the coffin of any relationship I ever had with them. Are you sure? Liam asked gently, his hand on my shoulder. They left me no choice, I said. I took a deep breath and made the post public, sharing it with friends and family. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Aunts, uncles, and cousins who had heard my mother's twisted version of the story reached out, shocked and apologetic. Clara, I had no idea, my Aunt Susan wrote. Your mother made it sound like you were being so cruel. This is monstrous. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years sent messages of support. The truth was out. For about a week, there was silence from my parents' camp. I thought, foolishly, that maybe, just maybe, the public shaming had been enough. Then the email arrived. It was from my mother's email address. The subject line was just 2 words, for Clara. There was one attachment. A PDF file. I clicked on it, and my jaw dropped. The document was professionally formatted, like a corporate invoice. At the top, in large, bold letters, it said, Your financial responsibility. Below was a meticulously itemized list. It was a budget for Chloe's baby for the first year. Prenatal vitamins, $150 per month. Childbirth classes, $300. Maternity clothes, designer $1,500. Doctor's copays, $200 per visit. Hospital delivery fee, private suite $10,000. Organic crib and changing table, $2,000. Luxury stroller system, $1,200. Designer diaper bag, $400. Organic diapers and wipes, $150 per month. Imported European formula, $200 per month. The list went on, page after page of absurd, extravagant expenses. At the very bottom of the final page, the grand total was listed in bold red font, $21,850. Below the total was a single, typed sentence, As this situation is ultimately your responsibility, we expect payment to be arranged within 30 days to avoid further action. I stared at the screen, not with anger, but with a kind of stunned disbelief that quickly turned into a dark, liberating amusement. They had actually put it in writing. They had created a piece of evidence so perfectly delusional, so completely damning, that it was almost a gift. "Liam," I called out, my voice shaking with laughter. "You have to see this." He read it over my shoulder, his expression shifting from confusion to outrage to pure astonishment. "They can't be serious," he breathed. "Oh, I think they are," I said, a slow, cold smile spreading across my face. "And I think they just gave me the perfect way to end this. Forever." I didn't just reply to her email. I opened a new document. I copied their formatting exactly. At the top, in the same large, bold font, I typed my own title, "Invoice for a Lifetime of Damages." My fingers flew across the keyboard as I created my own itemized list. Emotional distress and psychological damage, 20+ years of documented favoritism and neglect. I looked up the average cost of long-term therapy, $15,000. Theft of personal property, one antique diamond necklace, value determined by official appraisal of a similar piece from my grandmother's inheritance records, $5,000. Destruction of personal property, one senior prom dress, 1998. I even adjusted for inflation, $350. Attempted defamation and tortious interference, malicious and false report to employer, resulting in potential loss of salary and professional standing. I calculated the value of 1 month's pay, $7,500. I added it all up. The grand total came to $27,850. I took a deep, satisfying breath. I attached my PDF to a new email. I sent it not just to my mother, but to my father and Chloe as well. For the body of the email, I wrote a single paragraph. "To whom it may concern. Thank you for your invoice. I have reviewed it and, in the spirit of settling all outstanding family debts, I have attached my own for your consideration. As you can see, after deducting the $21,850 you believe I owe you, you still have an outstanding balance of $6,005 payable to me. Please do not contact me again until you are prepared to settle this account in full. Any further communication, including but not limited to emails, phone calls, or attempts to slander me to my employer, will be forwarded directly to my lawyer. Sincerely, Clara." I hit send. And as the email disappeared into the digital ether, I felt a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying lift from my shoulders. It was done. The final word had been said. And it was mine. The silence that followed that email was absolute. No angry phone calls, no hysterical texts. Nothing. It was as if my counter-invoice had been a silver bullet that had finally slain the monster. For the first time, I felt truly, completely in control of my own life. Our wedding day arrived 3 months later on a perfect, sunny October afternoon. We held the ceremony and reception at a beautiful old inn by a lake, surrounded by golden autumn trees. As I stood there, holding Liam's hands, looking out at the faces of our friends and his wonderful, loving family, I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Liam, ever the pragmatist, had insisted on hiring 2 discreet security guards for the event. "Just in case," he'd said. I thought it was overkill, but I was wrong. During the reception, as people were laughing and dancing, one of the guards approached Liam and spoke to him quietly. Liam nodded and came over to me. "Don't look now," he murmured, squeezing my hand, "but we have some wedding crashers." My heart stuttered for a beat. He led me to a window that overlooked the parking lot. There, standing near the entrance, were my parents and a heavily pregnant Chloe. My mother was holding a large, handwritten poster. Even from a distance, I could read the crude, black letters, "Clara abandoned her pregnant sister." They hadn't come to apologize. They had come to make a scene, to try and ruin the happiest day of my life. But they didn't get the chance. As we watched, the 2 security guards calmly walked over to them. There was no shouting, no struggle. Just a quiet, firm conversation. A few moments later, my parents lowered the sign, "Defeated." They got back in their car and drove away. They hadn't even made it past the parking lot. It was a pathetic, failed final act in a drama I was no longer a part of. Liam's sister, Maya, came up behind me and put an arm around my shoulders. "Your real family is in here," she said softly, gesturing to the crowded, joyful room. She was right. Looking at the smiling faces, at friends who had become family and in-laws who had shown me more love and support than my own parents ever had, I felt a profound sense of peace. My past was out there, in a car driving away in shame. My future was right here, in this room, holding my hand. We left for our honeymoon in Hawaii the next day. 2 blissful weeks of sunshine, sand, and new beginnings. I didn't check my phone once. Months later, I got a call from my Aunt Susan. She was one of the few relatives I had kept in touch with. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "Your parents are complaining to anyone who will listen. Apparently, Chloe had the baby, a little boy. But she has no job, and the baby is expensive. Your father had to sell a good chunk of his retirement stocks to help her pay for the hospital bill and a security deposit on a tiny apartment." I listened, a strange sense of detachment washing over me. "And that's not all," she continued. "After you posted your story, and word got around about them showing up at your wedding, a lot of their friends from church have been keeping their distance. They're miserable, Clara. They've lost a lot of faith in the community. I should have felt something, triumph, maybe, or even a little pity. But I felt nothing. Their lives, their struggles, their self-inflicted misery, it no longer concerned me. It was like hearing news about strangers. Their words and actions no longer had the power to hurt me. I have a life now that is richer and more beautiful than I ever could have imagined. A life with a man who respects and cherishes me, surrounded by people who lift us up. I broke free. I broke the cycle of toxicity and sacrifice that had defined my childhood. I found my own happiness, on my own terms. And sometimes, when I think about that invoice, I smile. It wasn't just about the money. It was about taking back my power. It was the price of my freedom, and it was the best money I never spent. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share, but I hope it can help someone out there who might be feeling trapped in a similar situation. My question for you is, have you ever had to send a metaphorical invoice to someone for the emotional damage they caused in your life? I'd love to read your stories in the comments below. And if you found my story helpful, please give this video a like and subscribe for more. It really does help the channel. Thank you again for being here.